made one, and here you have the color illustration. This man is very afraid to come forward. He was warned not to, and at one point was told he would be, quote, executed next. So here's what we need to go through very quickly. It's a lot to unpack. This is not intended to be, we just did a 2-day conference right next door. The media are welcome to get that entire event with all the details for you if you wish to have it, or people get it to you. But basically, there are two types of these so-called UAPs, and I've said this. Some are extraterrestrial vehicles, ETVs, and some are ATs or ARVs, advanced reproduction vehicles or alien reproduction vehicles. People use different terms. The extraterrestrial groups are absolutely not hostile. However, screaming caps, they are increasingly concerned about human hostility and our weapon systems, which include nuclear and scalar, the so-called, Dr. Zahari shared this weekend, about what scalar electromagnetic fields are. But just to give you a sense of it, you all know what an electromagnetic pulse is. That's at the speed of light. The scalar systems are, instead of a wave, is a point that goes out longitudinally. Some call them longitudinal waves. These have been studied. Tesla talked about scalar systems. They have been weaponized. And those are the primary systems used to target and hit these electromagnetic field propulsion craft that cause them to fall like a rock out of the sky. You do not travel from another star system and cannot navigate a thunderstorm in New Mexico. That ain't going to happen. So even at that point, these had been early systems. We have a FBI memo from a field agent that we released. It's now one of the most watched, viewed documents on the FBI website of the fact that a field agent at the Roswell, after Roswell, said to J. Edgar Hoover that a disk was downed because we had switched on a new radar system. So let me explain the euphemisms that are used in this field. Radar can track an aircraft by bouncing a wave off of the fuselage, but it also can have piggybacked an active system not to hit it. So you can have an active weapon system embedded in a radar system. So that's what began to be experimented with, and this is why from the mid-40s forward, there were a number of these downed objects that we've been able to document. If we've documented 122 of them, I suspect there have been multiple numbers of that. So what's very important about this, these technologies are unsanctioned. They are illegal operations, and this can be proven in any court of law, and we're about to launch a massive civilian RICO action, racketeer influence, corrupt organization action against the corporations and the individuals involved. These technologies would immediately solve the world's energy, environmental, and poverty problems. Why? These are what people call, a senior executive with a big Fortune 100 company contacted us. They're called, some people say free energy, but they're zero-point and quantum vacuum energy systems, pulling energy out of, let's call it the fabric of space-time. These begin to be developed. Tesla knew about this, so I think Elon Musk doesn't have a Tesla, he has a Musk. A real Tesla, we didn't have to plug in. I'd have one little battery in it. But the point is that these technologies would have a huge revolutionary effect. Macroeconomically, there would be some losers, oil industry, public utilities, nuclear power, now wind, solar, surface roads eventually would be obsolete. So it's a very significant technological advance, and for nearing a century, they have all been withheld. We just released an educational documentary film you can all see called The Lost Century and How to Reclaim It. It's a 2-hour expose of this. I suggest everyone look at it if you have a chance tonight. So these organizations have also been targeting and successfully downed the ET vehicles. The covert group has technologies to launch a convincing false flag operation detrimental to the national security. This was the chief topic of my briefing for 3-star General Patrick Hughes at the Pentagon during the Clinton years, because he was not read into this. There were some events that had happened where you could trigger a world war because your top folks in the Congress, the White House, the Pentagon, and CIA, many of them, if they're not part of this covert group, this deep black group illegally, they have no idea what's going on because of the nature of TSSCI, the hyper-compartmentalization that happened in the 50s. So these actions really are a threat to world security and national security, and they have to be reined in immediately. I want to choose my words carefully here. A clock, I understand, has been put on this getting resolved through hearings and other means, and by the end of this year, it needs to be resolved. And that's all I will say at this point. So these actions really are dangerous. They are crimes against humans worldwide. We're going to get into that. And some of these crimes need to be referred to the International Court. Some of them involve, as you'll hear from our attorney, crimes against humanity. We applaud the current actions of the Congress and the President to sign the bill to get to the bottom of this. They have very courageously stepped forward. We're trying to get them everything they would need to know. And I will tell you, the Disclosure Project Intelligence Archive literally has everything they would need to know to get to the absolute end of this. It's been handed to them. So the chief characteristics of this illegal secret government called ISG projects, the CIA folks and Pentagon people and most of the people in the government are victims of this. They're not culpable. When people say, why is the government hiding all this? Well, the government is very complex and it's highly compartmentalized. These operations have been run by a clandestine, unsanctioned group. And therefore, our military and our intelligence community and our political leaders are, in fact, victims of this secrecy. I want to refer very briefly to one of the very first CIA director, Admiral Roscoe Hillenkoetter, who in 1961 wrote to the New York Times and said, the secrecy around UFOs is a threat to the national security, not the UFOs. So what has happened is it's all been turned on its head, where they're trying to say, UAPs are a threat. Well, the man-made ones are. The extraterrestrial ones aren't. This has to be made crystal clear to the American people so we don't stumble into an absolute disaster of epic proportions. So these operations that I've been referring to in the United States, we have parallel projects in Australia at Pine Gap. There are projects in the United Kingdom. These are all very sub rosa, off the radar. I have done briefings for the Minister of Defenses of Australia, Canada, and Great Britain. None of them were read into these projects, and yet we had evidence they were ongoing. So they also act without acknowledging any national boundaries. What do I mean by that? So we have an operational facilities in other countries that we move in and out of with alacrity, without any knowledge or approval of that government. So this is also not good, obviously, and dangerous. But because of the nature of our operations, which can be cloaked, that have these AT or ARV vehicles, they can move off radar, they can go in and out of areas, and we have witnesses who can prove what I just said. Blackmail, bribery, and intimidation is the stock and trade, and is the operational core of this illegal secret government program. Many of our whistleblowers have been threatened and have been blackmailed